New York Ranger fans are tearing this team to shreds, and we tell you why it's justified.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1398 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So you might be surprised to hear this, but the vast majority of Ranger fans, myself included, are not thrilled with the way that the Rangers performed against the Penguins, a 3-0 loss at home on opening night for an entire bevy of reasons. But I think the biggest reason why fans are upset right now is because something that a lot of you pointed out, I think is very true. I think it's very much an appropriate thing to say after this loss last night. This felt very much like a continuation of last season. This felt very much like game number 83. And it's not just because they lost. It's not even just because they got shut out, but it's because so many issues that have plagued this Ranger team, certainly for all of last year, and maybe even during some of their good years as well, certain bad habits that would pop up every now and then, they were all on full display for the entire world to see last night. That's something that I didn't really talk about during last night's live episode, is just the simple fact that the Rangers were out there front and center stage for the NHL on opening night. You had a triple header, only 3 games played on opening night, and there was no overlap between any of them. So the 8 o'clock game, the 8 o'clock start time, Rangers versus Penguins, that's the game that the NHL is saying, okay, here we go. Here's a good rivalry game, and let's get this season going here, and hopefully you'll be entertained. And it was not an entertaining game in the slightest. But as far as the Rangers go, from their perspective, again, every bad habit showing up in full force to begin with. And we talked about this one during the live stream, but we'll repeat it quickly here. Being asleep at the start of a game and or the start of a period, as well as being asleep at the end of a period. And it's never okay to do this. It's never ideal. But the fact that the Rangers did this in the first period of the first game of the season at home at Madison Square Garden against a rival, trying to exercise last year's demons, and that's how they start and finish the first period of the first game of the season, it's just not acceptable. And we shouldn't have to tolerate it. Like, this is what I'm talking about when I say, fans are mad right now, and they have every right to be. It's this right here. Because, again, terrible habit, and it showed up the second the puck dropped in that opener last night. And we'll get to more specific fan complaints a little bit later in today's episode. We got some comments from some of you guys in the YouTube section and whatnot. But right now, again, we're kind of just going through the Rangers' greatest hits here, or their worst hits, depending on how you look at it. Another issue last night, getting outworked, getting out hustled. Right from that opening shift where the Penguins were swarming in the Rangers zone and they were all over the Rangers, that set a tone for the entire night. It felt like for the vast majority of the night that the Penguins had the better of play. Every now and then the Rangers would pick it up a little bit, and they'd actually spend a little bit of time in the offensive zone, maybe even get a half-decent scoring chance as well. But for the most part, the Penguins had the better of play. They were quicker to get to loose pucks. They were winning board battles. They were just more opportunistic. And honestly, Igor Shesterkin really the only reason why this game probably didn't end up with more of a lopsided score than it ended up being. And of course, there were 2 empty netters at the end, but for all intents and purposes, this was a 1-0 game until the Rangers pulled Igor, which leads me into the next thing that I want to talk about. This team hung its goalie out to dry last night. The Rangers had no fewer than 3 really, really bad giveaways in the defensive zone. There was one by Adam Fox. There was one by Mika Zibanejad. There was one by Vladislav Gavrikov. And in all 3 of these instances, it immediately led to a situation where the Penguins got control of the puck. Again, more opportunistic, just more alert, pouncing on the loose puck. The Penguins get to the loose puck, and they have a skater who's one-on-one with Igor Shesterkin. And Igor, in all 3 instances, was able to pick up his teammate. Again, Fox, Mika, Gavrikov. Those are the 3, at least, that I really honed in on. I mean, there were other giveaways as well, but those were 3 that really stood out just for how bad they were. And Igor picked all 3 of them up in every instance, and obviously prevent the Penguins from scoring in those situations in the game. How about this team failing to defend the front of the night? Mike Sullivan was talking a little bit about that. It was either the post-game presser last night, or he might have mentioned it a little bit earlier here today. It is Wednesday as I'm recording this, but he did talk about it, and he did notice it, just like a lot of us did last season, just like a lot of us did last night as well. We saw it on the first goal. We pretty much saw it all night. There's just not enough resistance. There's not enough of a reason for opposing players to not want to step into the Ranger crease because it's just too easy. And something else that was a problem last night, bad zone exits by this Ranger team. No one on this team, specifically the defenseman, can move the puck up the ice from the defensive zone. We saw multiple instances where they tried to do that and either misfire on the pass, turn the puck over altogether, or something along those lines. And as we mentioned, it often led to good scoring chances for the Penguins in this game. And honestly, we talk about the bad zone exits. It's beginning to feel, certainly last year and maybe even a little bit last night, like the book is out on the Rangers. Like that's an area where they struggle. And so teams are ultra aggressive in that situation. And they know that the Rangers are prone to mistakes in that spot. And they're looking to force a turnover and get a scoring chance off of it. Maybe Dan Muse had that scouted. I mean, he saw it up close and personal last season. And maybe he told the Penguins to be aggressive in those situations. It looks like they were. I think another big issue, again, that reared its head last night, was making things too easy on the opposing goalie. Yeah, 25 save shutout, good for you. But at the same time, when did we cause any kind of chaos? When was Pittsburgh's goalie under any kind of duress? It just didn't really happen in the game. And it's just too easy if you're an opposing goalie to go up against this Ranger team right now. Another issue from last year that spilled over into last night, the power play. They go 0 for 2. Didn't feel like they looked all that great, despite obviously a wealth of talent that's available to the Rangers. High-paid, high-profile players that you can put out there on any given power play. They tend to stack the top power play unit, as they've done with previous coaches, and just not a whole lot going on here. When the Rangers had the man advantage, it wasn't the worst Ranger power play showing that you'll ever see. I mean, the 2 for 50 last year certainly comes to mind, that stretch that they had, but it wasn't the best either, and it just wasn't. It didn't feel like this power play has really found its wings yet. They ended up with 3 shots on goal on the 2 power plays and nothing that really looked all that dangerous. And speaking of danger, Steve Valiquette, he does the whole clear sight analytics thing and breaks down for every game, how many scoring chances each team had, how many high danger, how many medium danger, how many low danger. He only credited with the Rangers with 1 high danger scoring opportunity the entire night. And I do not believe that occurred on the power play. Even if it did, I mean, either way, it's still 1 high danger scoring chance compared to, I believe it was 4 for the Penguins. So just not good enough there on the power play and really otherwise creating any kind of offense. And this one too, this one always bothers me. Just not giving yourself a shot in a game where you only trail by 1 goal. 2 years ago, Rangers are down by a goal going into the third period. Awesome. I love it because we've got them right where we want them. We're going to come back. We're a high character team. Last year, complete 180 and just too many instances, last year and also last night where you're down by a goal and you just don't apply any kind of pressure. You never really give the fans, the people watching this game, any reason to truly believe that you're about to come back, that you're about to find that clutch goal, that you're going to find the equalizer and do whatever it takes to get it. A couple of scoring chances here and there. But again, we talked about this in the last episode, outshot 15-5 in the third period in this game were the Rangers. In a situation where they were only trailing by 1 goal, you're 1 opportunity away from maybe tying it, despite obviously not playing a great game. And again, never stepped on the gas, never gave themselves a chance. Sullivan, before this game, we had the camera in the ESPN locker room, or the ESPN camera in the locker room, and he was talking about to the Rangers and giving them the pregame speech, and he says, we know we're going to have some juice. Yeah, they had some juice. They had maybe like a half glass full of juice. I mean, again, the effort wasn't terrible in this game. We've certainly seen worse. The skating and the pace what the Rangers played with, it wasn't terrible. But again, I think it's fair to expect and want more than what we got from this team overall last night. We talked about the whole playing with some FU, and obviously that was nowhere on display in this game either. Now, a lot of people, I already know this, or at least some people, are going to say things like, oh, it's just 1 game. There's a new coach. There's a new system. There's new players in place. And you got to give it some time. I get all that. That does have some merit. But again, you've got to remember what we were all subjected to last season. And for that reason, I feel like a fan base, and I include myself in this, that doesn't always have a ton of patience, the patience right now is going to be like paper thin because we don't want to go down the same road that this team went down this past season. So when you go out there and you go up against a team that most people do not think coming into the season is going to be a playoff team, a lot of them had them even finishing dead last in the Metro Division, and you lay an egg and you get shut out at home and you're just not good enough and you don't get enough quality play from the star players. Some of them might be injured, Panarin and JT Miller, but it just wasn't good enough. So we're not known for being a super patient fan base in the first place. But again, what we saw last year, this team destroyed every ounce of goodwill that it ever had with us, especially, the core players, the veterans that are supposed to be leading the way. So the patience is very, very thin for this fan base right now. And performances like last night certainly do not help. So again, I think the big thing for, the upcoming matchup against Buffalo, just play with more intensity, play with more drive, play with more fire, play with more FU. That was the whole big thing this offseason, right? So let's see that on display against Buffalo, and let's even the record and go from there. Because again, the season starts with 3 theoretically easy games: Penguins, Sabres, Penguins. And then after that, it gets very difficult in a heck of a hurry. So you got to take advantage of this. And it starts with a win in Buffalo. We'll see if the Rangers can get it. But in just a second, we're going to keep everything rolling. Going to shift gears quite a bit here. We're actually going to talk about some of the recent big name, formerly impending unrestricted free agents in the NHL who recently re-upped with their current team and how that potentially impacts the Rangers going forward. We'll discuss that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you will unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is the best because it's got something for you no matter how you like to play. Whether you're a fan of those same-game parlays or you're into player props, or you want to bet for or against your favorite team, or you've got some hunch that you feel like you just need to play, FanDuel has got you covered. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Big shout out to the everydayers, as always, that continue to endure what we call New York Ranger hockey, all the ups and downs and everything in between. In the next episode, going to be discussing everything that happens between the Rangers and the Sabres on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. Let me know in the comment section who you believe will score the first Ranger goal of the season. I proposed that question to everybody on social media last night. As it turns out, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer than we would have hoped. But go ahead. If you get it right, maybe you get a shout out in the next episode. But for right now, again, shifting gears, talking a little bit about the big name impending UFAs that are no longer impending UFAs because they have re-signed with their current team. We're talking about guys like McDavid, Kaprizov, Connor, and very likely, very soon, it would seem, Jack Eichel as well. We were hoping for some fun next offseason with a free agent class for the ages when all these guys were going to become unrestricted free agents at the same time. And then it's just an absolute frenzy. It's an absolute arms race. And where are all these guys going to end up? What's going to happen? Are the Rangers going to get one of them? It would have been fun for hockey fans that follow any team, no matter who your favorite team is. Just would have been a lot of chaos. And I think we all would have embraced that. By that same token, you cannot fault any of these teams for wanting and in some cases succeeding in re-signing, their big name UFAs to long-term deals. So within the past, 2 weeks or so, a lot of these guys have signed. You got Kirill Kaprizov signs a record-setting deal for 8 years and $17 million a season to stay with Minnesota. You can understand why they did that. Connor McDavid, now this is an interesting one. This got everybody talking, obviously, the other day. I mean, pretty much anything he does is going to get people talking. But McDavid stays with the Oilers at 2 years and $12.5 million per season. That is the hometown discount to end all hometown discounts. But it also feels like it's shots fired from Connor McDavid where, okay, I'm going to stick around for this year, 2 more years on top of that. You've got that amount of time to bring in some awesome players and get us to a Stanley Cup. And I'll decide what I want to do after that based on how these next 3 seasons go. That's the impression that I got. kind of just connecting the dots and looking at the lay of the land, it kind of feels like that's what McDavid and his camp are thinking as well. We'll see what happens there. But either way, the pipe dream of McDavid coming to the Rangers does not look like that's going to be happening now. And you had Kyle Connor signing for 8 years at $12 million a season to stay with the Winnipeg Jets. So those are the big three. And then Jack Eichel, there were rumors that him and Vegas might be closing in on an extension of some kind. Nothing officially official as of yet, but a lot of reports in the last 24 hours or so saying that it does sound like these two sides are close, and there's obviously a lot of mutual interest there. And it does certainly seem like a deal is going to get done. I mean, never say never. You never know for sure until, the ink is on the paper, but it doesn't look like Jack Eichel is going to be available for the Rangers next offseason either. I know there's a lot of people upset with Chris Drury about this because a lot of people seem to think that, maybe he overplayed his hand or he was looking too much at next year's free agent class. And there could be some truth to that. But at the same time, I don't really think this Ranger offseason would have been a whole lot different. I mean, you can't really sign any more players than the Rangers signed. Next year is the year where the Rangers are going to have significant cap space. And that's the year where, in theory, you can go out and get some of the big name free agents. Although, like we just mentioned, a bunch of them are now off the market. There is one more major target left as far as next year's free agency class, unrestricted free agents, that I really like. Personal favorite of mine, has been for a while. And he's somebody that if he does make it to free agency, going to have a ton of interest. I think certainly the Rangers will be in on him, and that is going to be Adrian Kempe of the Los Angeles Kings. 29 years old, always been a good player, but he's really emerged the last couple of seasons as an offensive force as well, which is a really, really good all-around, well-rounded player, and somebody that I think would make a lot of sense for the Rangers if he were to make it to free agency. He's also in the final year of a 4-year deal for $5.5 million per season. That number is certainly going to increase. And then there's RFAs, Jason Robertson, Martin Necas, but you have to strike a trade to land one of them, and you got to figure that their respective teams would like to hold on to them as well. So it's funny kind of looking at this right now and trying to figure out exactly how this impacts the Rangers, because as strange as it sounds, the Rangers might end up with more cap space next offseason than they even know what to do with. And it's funny to say that because we're so used to the Rangers being tight up against the cap, and if they get this guy, the team needs to, retain salary, whatever the situation might be. And, they're 5 cents under the salary cap or whatever that situation might be as well. But now, you've got a situation where the Rangers are right now projected to have close to $30 million in cap space next offseason. A big part of that is obviously the Artemi Panarin contract coming off the books, but where do you even spend it? Again, all these big UFAs are signing with their current teams, or in Eichel's case, it certainly seems like that could and likely will be happening in the not too distant future. So who do you get? I mean, we'll do a deeper dive into this in a later episode. It is a little bit early to be talking about next year's free agent class, but with this recent wave of signings, McDavid and possibly Eichel, and obviously Connor the other day and Kaprizov, it does certainly affect the Rangers, I think, in the long term, and also possibly in the short term as well, because the ripple effect here with all these guys, signing long-term deals, or McDavid's case, a short-term deal, and staying with their respective teams, the ripple effect for the Rangers is that this now, I feel like, makes it more likely that they would try to get a contract extension done with Artemi Panarin either in season or at the end of this upcoming season. And that could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing. I've said all along that Artemi Panarin, to me, feels like he is the Rangers' backup plan, where if they miss out on all these different UFAs, and they've already missed out on a bunch of them because they've re-signed, that the Rangers then might look to make a play to keep Artemi Panarin in the fold going forward. But I don't know. I mean, part of the problem now, and again, I didn't have a problem with the Rangers not doing an extension with Panarin. I think being in wait-and-see mode makes the most sense. But with every UFA, potential big UFA in next year's market that re-signs with his current team, it just adds to Panarin's leverage. Reports from Ranger camp were that the Rangers, at least preliminary talks, I guess, about a potential contract extension. The Rangers may be looking for a little bit of a discount. Artemi Panarin not so keen on giving the Rangers a discount. And with every UFA that comes off the board that is no longer available next year, Panarin gets more leverage because, okay, well, if you don't re-sign me, who are you going to sign? So we'll see how it goes. Again, there's a lot of different ways that this thing could play out. But Panarin, I think a lot of it's obviously going to have to do with his season this year. How did the Rangers fare? Are they contenders at the deadline, or are they in sell mode? And would Panarin waive the no move clause? There's a lot to consider here for sure, but we'll see how it goes. And unfortunate for a lot of reasons why all these guys came off the books. I mean, again, it would have been chaos next year if all these guys made it to free agency. Would have been a lot of fun. And for the Rangers, obviously, they can no longer go out and get these players. So that's unfortunate as well. But in just a second, we're going to get back to this theme of the fans not being so happy right now, being a little bit discontent. We're going to read some of your comments from the most recent episode of Locked On New York Rangers. You guys were not happy about this performance, and we'll get to your comments in just a second. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by talking a little bit about, again, some of your comments at the end of today's show. We're just going to go right through it here, and I'll add my thoughts as we go here. PBMC says, we are literally worse than last year. And then Twin Fantino says, think you're right. Little early to jump to that conclusion. I can understand, having that knee-jerk reaction after watching whatever it was that the Rangers were doing last night, but I'm not there yet. Let's wait and see how everything goes. There is a new coach, and we'll see how it shakes out. I'm not there yet, though, after just one game. We've got this one from ZJ. Rangers seem to think it was still preseason. There was something to that where it felt like it was a little bit too much of a feeling out process for the Rangers. And again, some of that might be the new coach, some new players in the lineup as well, and learning a new system. But the Penguins are dealing with all that too. They have a new coach, they have some new players, and they have a new system as well. And they looked a lot better in this game than the Rangers did. And part of the issue, I think, as well, that Ranger fans had with this team last night is, again, just not enough fire, not enough intensity for really any game, much less the season opening game in your barn against a division rival. So I think that's a big part of the reason why Ranger fans are upset right now. We've got this from Brian Miller. My internet went out right about the time this game started. Maybe that was a blessing, but how did Laba play? So you kind of made the joke for me. Yeah, it probably was a blessing. You really didn't miss a whole heck of a lot as far as the Rangers and any kind of fireworks or anything that was fun or interesting or unique or exciting about this game. But Laba did good. I think he was one of the better Ranger forwards on the ice. I mentioned this in the episode last night where I feel like the bottom six in some ways maybe looked a little bit better than the Rangers top six. That was a theme from last season as well. But, Laba was all over the ice, some more South hockey. He was getting in on the forecheck. Him and Sheary and Radish almost linked up for a goal, and it was basically due to all of them just getting in there quickly on the forecheck. And Laba started that and applied some pressure and forced the turnover. Laba did good. He didn't have as many of those highlight reel kind of plays that he did in the preseason, but, first game jitters, obviously going up against an opponent who's now going full bore, but I think, a solid performance from Laba. And Mike Sullivan had similar thoughts after this game as well. We've got a comment here from AJ. Kudos to Dan Muse and his Penguins coaching staff. His team was on point defensively all game, and his players skated like they were shot out of a cannon all night. Conversely, our lifeless and heartless New York Ranger team played and showed who they are. It's sad to say, but it's going to be Groundhog Day, like the movie, until we get an infusion of talent and youth into this lineup. Time to cut bait on Fox, Mika, and Lafreniere. Yeah, if the Rangers, if this is what it's going to be, if they just don't have enough juice, enough jump to their game, then you will see, I think, an infusion of some of these younger players. Like I mentioned before, the clock right now is ticking for some of those Ranger veteran players, the guys that are kind of role players, whether that's Brodzinski and Parson, who are both healthy scratches for this game, or whether that's Sheary and Radish, who obviously were in the lineup. Those guys have to deliver because I don't think you can wait too long to call up the kids, try to infuse this team with some energy and some youth. If it's going to be a situation where, they just look a half step slow as they did for, a good amount of this game last night. As far as cutting bait on Fox, Mika, and Lafreniere, full no move clause for Fox, full no move clause for Mika. Lafreniere does not have a full no move. He might not really have much of anything, but it would also be a sell low situation where, I don't know. I mean, I just don't know what you would be able to get back for him. And it's kind of at the point where you might as well just try to see it through and try to get him rolling a little bit. We'll see how the Rangers look to play it. This one comes to us from John DiMatteo. If Perreault, Robrick, and Offman play well for Hartford, and we are 20 games into the Rangers season, which is the quarter mark, and say they have a record of 4-12-4. Jeez, 4-12-4. I hope it's not that bad. I know last night was rough. I don't think they're going to be basically 4-16, 20 games into the season. But if they are, then yeah, absolutely changes would have to be made at that point. You would see those young guys stepping in for the veterans. But 4-12-4, wow. But yeah, to continue the question here, basically, if that was their record, will we see these kids called up replacing guys like Radish, Carrick, and Sheary? This is the young bottom six I'd love to see them have. Othman, Laba, and Perot, Edstrom, Robrick, and Rempe. Yeah, I mean, like you said it, man. If they get off to a catastrophic start, then they can only keep these kids in the minors for so long. And I understand that you want to get them some seasoning. And I don't know that they call up like every young kid all at the same time, like 4 new forwards one night. I don't think they would do it that way. But I do like your bottom six. I mean, I don't like the fact that Berard's not in there. But other than that, I mean, Othman, Laba, Perot, I think that could work. Othman and Perot, I know Othman had a tough training camp and a tough showing in the preseason, but I do feel like their styles could eventually complement each other pretty well. You've got Othman, who can really shoot the puck. You've got Perot, who can really pass the puck, has a high hockey IQ, really sees the ice well, does Perot. Othman can go in and do some of the dirty work, and then Perot, he's the skills guy. So I do think that could be a fun line. And Laba, I mean, again, like a lot of you, I was really impressed with what I saw from him in the preseason last night as well. So that could be certainly a future Ranger line. I believe those three were together for a decent amount of rookie camp as well, and those 2 rookie games against the Flyers. And then the fourth line, I mean, I got to see that at some point, just for the sight of it. Edstrom, Robrick, and Rempe, because they're all like 6'8", well over 200 pounds. That I think could be a lot of fun for sure. At some point, I do think we will see that combination. We've got Edward Wool, who says, yes, I felt they pulled the goalie way too quick. And then Jeffrey Patton weighed in on this as well. Pulling your goalie at any point does not work if you are not a puck possession team. So for anybody that missed the episode last night, the live episode that we did, I went off on the Rangers for a lot of different things, but I also went off on this new wave analytical driven strategy of coaches pulling their goalie just obnoxiously early when they're only down by 1 goal. And I'm not going to rant and rave about it like I did last night, but yes, I do think the Rangers pulled their goalie too early last night, and the Penguins end up scoring with about 2 minutes and 10 seconds, 2 minutes 15 seconds, somewhere in that ballpark left in the game. Now, as far as Jeffrey's comment, pulling your goalie at any point does not work if you are not a puck possession team, I hear what you're saying. But, I mean, at a certain point, you have to pull your goalie. It's really just a debate of when it happens. Even if you want to be ultra conservative and wait until there's only a minute left, sooner or later, the risk is worth the potential reward. It gets to a point where you've got nothing to lose because, you've got to score a goal, obviously, and you've got to shoot your shot. But as far as like being a puck possession team, I mean, that would help. And the Rangers didn't really seem to have the puck for that often in general, or certainly not for any long stretches of play in this game last night. And even during this situation here where the Penguins got their first of 2 empty netters, it was the same deal. The Rangers didn't have possession of the puck and were waving Igor off the ice. So I don't get it, but having possession would have been a good start. This from John. Rangers offensive players lack FU. Defense is good. I agree with the first part of that. Respectfully disagree with the second part of it. Unless you're talking about Igor Shesterkin as part of the defense. Because again, he was great in this game. The Rangers completely wasted it. What else is new? It's the same old, song and dance. But as far as the defense being good in this game, I didn't really see it. I mean, they didn't really clear out the crease all that well. I mentioned earlier some of the catastrophic turnovers that this team had in the defensive zone. Didn't really think any of the defensemen really stood out all that much in a positive way in this game last night. It is just one game. We'll see how they do. But as far as team defense, I mean, you can point to the fact that they only gave up 1 goal. But again, and not counting the empty netters, of course. But again, only giving up 1 goal for the first, 58 minutes or so, that was almost all due to Igor Shesterkin and maybe even a little bit of puck luck. The Penguins did have an opportunity to make it 2-0, and they hit the post, and the puck was laying there in the crease. The Rangers were able to get rid of it, but I didn't think the defense was all that good in this one, other than Igor Shesterkin, if you're counting him as part of the defense. We've got JT Hockey Guy here. I was at the game. I'm sorry you were at the game, bro. I was at the game. Sully says you can control effort, which is 100% true. What does that say about this team? Slow and sloppy. I hope it's them getting used to a new system, but I'm not sure. Trying to stay optimistic, but again, they did not look like they wanted it at all. Yeah, again, I mean, that kind of goes back to something we were talking about early, where I do think there was okay effort in this game, but it's just not at the level. Nothing about this team's effort or jump or juice or whatever hockey term you want to use would have led you to believe that this is a team coming off of a terrible season, and they're mad and they're angry and they're going to embrace that mantra of playing with some FU, and they're going to go out there and they're going to drag each other into the fight. That's a new term that's kind of popped up this offseason as well. Nothing to really suggest that. Nothing at all. So I totally get your point there. Again, hopefully it is just it ends up being just an anomaly this game last night. It's just one game. It is a case of getting used to a new system. But if you have your concerns about that, I understand that as well. I'm not going to completely write off this season, but that was not an encouraging start for the Rangers last night. We've got John Dalmas, who says, when Matt Rempe is on your second power play unit and is the fifth best player on the ice for your team, you will not win any games. And then really says, maybe, but give the guy credit for bringing effort every game, unlike most of this team. Yeah, Rempe was out there busting it last night, man. I really do think that he was going in aggressively on the forecheck, dished out a couple of hits, won a couple of puck battles, at least once or twice, pass from behind the net in front. The Penguins were able to break it up, but at least, looked like it was a decent scoring chance for the New York Rangers. I've honestly got no issue with Matt Rempe on the second power play. There's no obvious forward there to take his place. And I do like the idea of him just screening the goalie. I mean, him just standing there can make a difference for that unit. So I don't really have too much of a problem with that. I understand he's not an offensive juggernaut, but be that as it may, I mean, he's the 10th of their 10th power play guys, and he does have a unique role that he can play when he's out there on the man advantage. Jazzman says, I can take a loss if we put maximum effort and just lose in a good game. The culture of this team is awful. No passion, no fire, no will to win. Yeah, I mean, again, a little too early to jump to those kinds of conclusions. But if you're having I don't even know what the word is. If you're having flashbacks, there we go. If you're having flashbacks to last season and PTSD from last season based on what we saw in this game last night, I can at least somewhat understand it. Again, it was nowhere near as bad as some of the performances that we saw last year, but it certainly wasn't good either. And it certainly wasn't good when you, again, acknowledge the fact that it was opening night against a division rival at home. And then I think this is my favorite comment, Kevin McGuire with this one. Don't forget, 5 shots in the third period. Sounds like the same old BS to me. No F you, more like F me. So if things do go south this season, and I hope they don't, I'm not somebody that wants to come on here and talk about how bad this team is and this guy sucks and that guy doesn't give any effort. That's not fun for me. When I have fun is when the Rangers are good and they're making runs through the playoffs, winning overtime playoff games and getting to the Eastern Conference Final and going toe-to-toe with, the elite teams in this league. That's what's fun to me. But fans are going to have a field day with this stuff. There's already a lot of good ones that they're kind of developing. No BS. Somebody, I think it was in response to something that I said on Twitter. They said no BS stands for no body scores. So that's a pretty good one for opening night. And pretty good zinger here from Kevin McGuire as well. No FU, more like F me. I hope not, man. But again, you put yourself out there and you go with these no BS slogans and you go with play with some FU. And if the Rangers, if this is what it's going to be this season, then again, fans are going to have a field day coming up with some jokes about this. But I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that obviously better results against Buffalo. We'll call it there for today. Thank you guys as always for tuning in, and I will see you next time.